Look, to be quite honest, as an anti the Wall Park man, I was happy not to see him. Hello, hello, hello. We are back for episode 7 of the 2026 Cheltenham Festival Ante-Post series, powered by Priced Up. And we absolutely smashed the right goal last week, so thank you very much for clicking that button. We surpassed all expectations, and we'd love you to click that button again, as it really helps us out on the YouTube algorithm. And please do remember that subscriptions is where it's at for this channel. We'd love to get to 4,000 by the Cheltenham Festival, and we are well and truly marching on that yellow brick road to wizardry. So please do click those buttons. In this episode, we are going to be discussing the handicap entries made on Tuesday, so hot off the press, as well as reviewing all of our selections so far in this series, discussing, I think, what are three decent portfolios to go to war with at the moment, anyway. As well as that, Jake Price news updates and, of course, Ante-Post bet number 7 from each of us. So there's loads going on this episode of the Ante-Post series, and very much looking forward to getting going. Jake, how are things with you, my friend?
Yeah, all good. Busy day today, obviously tweeting out all these handicap entries at 12 o'clock. Thank you very much. Yeah. It was quite stressful actually getting them all out. I've got them all at 1 minute past 12 today, so
Slacker.
tap on the wrist for me. Oh no. But yeah, no, I'm glad it's all done. Obviously got the weights next week, which we'll cover again in full on the jump show. But very busy and exciting time of year, that's for sure.
Yeah, mate, not all heroes wear capes, that is for sure. And I like the fact that whenever you do this each year, there's always like a whole smattering of people absolutely giving you all these compliments and praise. It must make your head inflate a little bit, I have to say, each year. But it's all good stuff, Jake. You're doing great work. Dan, how are you, mate? How was your week? I had the pleasure of seeing you in the Racing TV studio on Friday.
Mm.
Well, we kind of just switched over, didn't we? As you head on, went to the sofa, I exited my chair after a busy afternoon analysing a vintage Fakenham card, and I'll be back on Friday this week as well, where I'll be looking at a vintage
Hey.
Warwick card, which actually somehow might be worse than the Fakenham one. But there you go.
Surely
When there's
not.
a bad card to look at, they call me. Because they know you can do the bad stuff well. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'll never see a horse rated over 130. That's the rule.
Yeah.
Except when you go to bed at night in your dreams.
Yeah,
Um,
and even then, not
well,
so
luckily, we
great.
can talk about a few 130 plus horses in this. We had the handicap entries in today, and obviously, it's some big news, particularly about some of those who have been absent from some of the bigger races, bigger handicaps. So, we're going to go through each day, and let's start by looking at Tuesday. And Jake, I guess the big headline was no entries for the Wall Park.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the Woolpark was the talking horse, as we spoke about on last week's episode, wasn't he? Where I kind of said I didn't think he would get into a 0 to 1-4, but not 0 to 145 anyway. But yeah, he just didn't get a single entry across the whole of the festival. And Frank Berry came out afterwards and said it was never the plan to come to Cheltenham. So I did give that a little chuckle. But yeah, he was gone from the National Hunt Chase and Kimura, obviously. In My Teens and North Shore, again, were two quite fancy types for the Fred Winter. They didn't get entered for that either. Um, to be honest, the overall picture, I would say, if I'm summing it up, was that there wasn't too much news, but I'd say Tuesday you probably got the biggest news with the ballpark.
Yeah, I wonder, Dan, do you think that when Frank Berry said that it was never the plan to go to Cheltenham with the Wall Park, his nose just became bigger like Pinocchio?
Well, it's a funny one, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure it was a case of it would have been discussed quite. I mean, what would been the harm of entering him anyway? I mean, where are they going? Irish national, I
Yeah.
suppose the
Mm.
logical target. What always makes me laugh though is that there seems to be more than ever. Maybe it's just always a bit up to Cheltenham now. There's a spluttering of these pages on Twitter now where make you believe that they know everything and like they've got all these inside connections. And I generally it's unbelievable the amount I see now. It's like all my members knew the Wall Park wasn't going to run. Yeah, we had a call direct from the great man himself. I'm like, Jesus Christ, the bluster on these people. Like it's to actually
Yeah.
think that they were in some sort in the know in some way. It's truly extraordinary, and I think only ever gets worse this time of year. But
Look, to be quite honest, as an anti the Wall Park man, I was happy not to see him.
Yeah, and do you know what? This time of year as well, Dan, I find there's so many people online who state their opinions as though they're fact and they're right and nothing else is correct. Like leading up to the Cheltenham Festival with their anti-post selections and their beliefs and everything. I just think back to when Poneros won the Triumph Hurdle at 100 to 1. I mean, I think no one had that, obviously, and these are the things that happen at Cheltenham. Like it's completely unpredictable. So no matter how strong your belief is, it is not law.
Yeah, it's always the big festivals are always the worst time for the blustery I am the man punters. And there's plenty of them where, yeah, as you say, there is no space for nuance in this game all of a sudden. Where are you on a cold, miserable Thursday at Fakenham? I don't see you there. It's only with these big meetings where they all come out to play, and my God, are they annoying?
Yeah, quite right. Yeah, very good rant. Jake, let's move on to Wednesday, shall we? And I suppose most of the news today you put on the running order, the French horses have binned off the cross country. I like the way you phrased it.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, I think it's to do with this new rule, isn't it, where you can't be more than £15 up the handicap, and in the cross country, there's only a £20 handicap range anyway, so obviously it's quite tight, and it means you basically have to be within £35 of Stumptown to actually get a run. Obviously, that rules out quite a lot. I think even Jarive de l'Est is not going to actually get into the race. But yeah, so the likes of ISO Madrick, PlaceNet, the ones I called the usual suspects, they weren't entered. Hip Hop Conti, who gets literally priced up every single year, never turns up, also didn't get an entry. There's only one French horse in there called Caradaz. Need to do some research into him. Don't really know much about him, but yeah, there's only one French horse, so that's something to bear in mind. And in total, the cross country got 31 entries, which is obviously very, very low, but because it's a specialist area, and the fact that you've got this new rule with the £15, it is making it tougher to actually get a lot of entries for that race.
Yeah,
Hip
do you
Hop
know what,
Conti
Dan?
now in the Phalem school of mythical French
Oh,
horses.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, bring back the days of Casbar Bliss. That's what I say. Um, Dan, just as far as the cross country is concerned, they wouldn't be complete. So I rather hope that he gets a ride without David Cotin just throwing one arm off the reins at each jump, which he seems to have done for the last 2 or 3 years. He looks like he's falling off every time.
Oh no, I think I'll sleep quite comfortably if he doesn't have a ride. To be quite honest, I don't think I'll be. It won't keep me up at night anyway. It's weird the cross country now because obviously there was a lot of clamour for it to become a handicap, and now it's the strangest handicap because you're always going to have one or two high class horses keeping out a lot of the handicappers. So I'm not sure it's really worked out how they would have
Get
hoped.
back to our debate the night before the DRF, where we spent
Oh
about an
God,
hour
yeah,
debating the cross country.
yeah, to the despair of everyone around us. Absolute
Unfortunately,
shambles.
yeah.
Wish I'd heard that. Right, on to the Thursday, Jake. And I mean, I guess I'm slightly chagrined here because there's a fair few JP McManus horses who haven't been entered, including one of my anti-post selections, which I will get onto later when we discuss our portfolio. But Lovely Hurling sadly hasn't got an entry. He obviously needs to get another run to qualify, and they've run out of time.
Yeah, exactly that. I think a fair few of the JP sexy Irish novices who are with the smaller trainers rather than your Gordons and your Willies, they didn't get entered here. So Pure Steel looked a nice type, staying at home. Lovely Hurling obviously staying at home, and Shuffle the Deck, another one who ran on the weekend who was qualified but is staying at home. So that's three pretty big ones in the Jack Richards. Looking away from that, the Kim Muir. Back Me or Sack Me is only in the National Hunt Chase, so he doesn't have the option, which is interesting. Will the Wise wasn't put in the Kim Muir, much to our sad. We tried to get in there all year round, and now he's only in the plate. I think Gavin Cromwell's got his way, but I think he doesn't stay 3 miles. And then Jericho de Repene is also only entered in the Kim Muir. That's probably another one worth mentioning.
Yeah. Do we think that Dan, that possibly Jericho de Repene, come the actual week itself, is going to be one of the biggest talking horses in the handicaps? I mean, he kind of already has been already.
Yeah, he will be, but he's already so short that he's just kind of you just kind of forget him at this stage, don't you? And just if he's one of those, if he wins, he wins. I won't like
Yeah.
it, but he was the same last year going into the Temps and he got beat by a complete rag. So I'm hoping for the same again.
Yeah, one thing I will mention about him, I think Henderson's done rather well to get him to jump because I honestly thought at the beginning of his chasing career, he wasn't going to have a career in that sphere at all, but
We
managed
won't
to.
know how well he jumps until he's actually properly put in the race. To be fair,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, finally, Friday, Jake, Alexei not in the county, so that leaves one road.
Yeah, Alexei not in the county, so yeah, as you said, champion hurdle only for him, not given that option. In the Martin Pipe, plenty of interesting entries, obviously. Bowen's on Fire, Son of Anarchy, Cocktail Brute weren't in, despite Cocktail Brute had like an entry in the Michael Purcell today, which also Kazansky was entered in. Now he's kept his entry in the Martin Pipe, but he is not qualified because he didn't get declared for the Turlers race. So yeah, you can cross him off your list despite the fact he's actually in the entries.
Okay, cool. Those are the handicap entry news then. Unless Dan, you've got anything else you'd like to proffer forward on the 4 days as a whole.
Nope, I think it's pretty open and shut. There's some pretty weak looking handicaps there, which I'm sure we'll touch on later.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go to last week then with our weekend review. And there weren't too many pointers. I mean, we're getting to that time of year, aren't we, in the calendar when mid-February, late February, there isn't too much in the lead up to Cheltenham for obvious reasons. But there were a few races to touch on. And Jake, let's start with the Red Mills trial, shall we? And Storm Hart, who was off the bridle a fair way out, rounded the home bend, really. But to his credit, I suppose he's quite well named because he's got loads of heart.
Yeah, it was good. Something very interesting about Storm Hart is that he's managed to win twice this season, and the Irish handicap has seen it fit to leave him on a mark of 147, which I don't think the BHA is going to agree with when he comes over here. I know a lot of people are keen on Storm Hart for the Coral Cup, and they have been for a while. And obviously they were looking out for his mark this week when they got amended after this race. So that's something to bear in mind. I think he'll be one of the horses who's towards the harsher end treated, I'd say, just based on the fact the Irish handicap hasn't moved him. But yeah, in this race, Work Ahead ran really well in second. Farron Glory ran really well in third. That boosted the Carbell form, who I put up for the county last week, which was nice to see. But yeah, Stormheart came through, ran really well, and the Coral Cup seemingly is where he's going to end up. Obviously, the horse who took everybody's eye out was Cowabunga, having his first start in about a year, finished like a train in fourth place. He's going to have races, but where they'll be obviously isn't at Cheltenham, so we'll won't touch on him too much here.
Okay, let's move on to the Kingwell, which is never really these days too much of a pointer to the champion hurdle because it tends to attract a field that isn't high class enough, I suppose. I rather wish that they'd put Constitution Hill in the race, but there you go. Alexei in the end was the winner, Dan, and I suppose he did it well, saw off a fairly good yardstick in Rubo at that level. A little bit concerned for me is his head carriage in the closing stages and the fact that after the race, Brendan Power was interviewed and asked whether that was still a little bit of greenness because he hasn't had too many starts. And Brendan sort of said, no, it's just the way he is, which isn't a great sign for me. And ultimately, I don't think he's going to be good enough.
Probably won't be good enough to win, but a lot of people just immediately said, "Oh, yeah, no use whatsoever." I was a bit more optimistic about it than most. I think he's a
Okay.
horse I've liked all season. I don't think a small field really suits him, and yes, obviously you don't really want him wandering and looking at the crowd on the run up, but they came up the rail side, and I don't think he'd really experienced that much in recent starts. He's been very much smuggled in big field handicaps with nobody near him to really have a look at. I think just picking up Roubaud and going away quite comfortably, despite lugging his head to one side, shows he's a fair animal. And in what is a weak champion hurdle, I can definitely see a world in which he finishes third. Is he good enough to win? Probably almost certainly not, if anything of substance turns up. But he's been progressive all year. We've already seen him handle Cheltenham. I wouldn't be as dismissive as most are. I think a lot were immediately saying just run him in the county. I think there's every reason to line up in the champion hurdle after what he's done this season.
Yeah, Jake, if you had overs and unders about how many runners in the champion hurdle you think there'd be, what would you say at the moment, final field?
Oh, 8.
Jesus, brutal question. Christ,
Yeah.
hearing me, yeah,
And just
yeah.
one
My
minute.
Off
line,
piece.
my line would have been 7.5, I think, on the first
Yeah.
instance. So yeah,
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
good. It's
I'd,
going to
I'd
be a
say
relatively small field.
it kind of depends as well on who, like, is a Constitution Hill going to end up turning up? Is a Lossiemouth going to end up turning up? Like, it could end up being such a weak race that you throw in Toti Conti, you throw in all the outsiders just to try and pick up some prize money, or it could end up being as best as it can be, having Lossiemouth, having Constitution Hill, having everybody in there, and then suddenly maybe you don't have as many of the outsiders coming.
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, Jake, throw you under the bus with that question. That's a good answer. It's a good answer. Anything on Alexei for you, Jake, at all? What do you think of him as a racehorse?
No, he did it well. I'd like to see him have his chance in graded company. If he runs well, then next season we might see him in, those grade two type races. Maybe not a grade one horse, but I think he can definitely win graded races.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the jukebox kid who won the Rendlesham is a very likable horse. Actually, finds loads for pressure. I mean, I know it was only a three-runner race, but I like the way he did it. Jake, do you think maybe something like Aintree would suit him? What do you think they'll do with him?
I think the plan is to go to the National Hunt Chase. He's gone up to a mark of 142 today, so he got £5 for that win. As I said, he's only been entered in the National Hunt Chase, so that's seemingly his target. I'd say 142 is pretty steep enough for testing 3-6 for the first time. Obviously, he went to Cheltenham before and he disappointed actually, where he ran over 3-1 and he just kind of faded in the last half furlong type up the hill. So that was something you would have to bear in mind with him. But yeah, I wouldn't disagree that he could be a definite Aintree horse at some point in his career.
Okay, what did you make of it, Dan? Do you think he's got a chance if he went to Cheltenham for the National Hunt Chase?
I thought they'd also mused that the Irish national could be a possibility as well. I think pre-race they suggested he might actually be better right-handed at this stage. And obviously his one bad run this season was at Cheltenham. So
Mm.
whether they go elsewhere, I think remains to be seen. And Irish national obviously a big old stamina test as well, so that would be unknown territory. But I think they were sort of musing that right-handed for now is probably where he's best, which was an interesting observation made by Ben Pauling. The form of this is very muddling. Crest of Fortune is just continually tricky. I don't know what he is. I think he's a poorly handicapped horse who's a bit tripless. And Western Knight, I think you look at his chase form, it's really, really weak. And he never really went on over hurdles. He looks a fair chaser, but nothing that would really get me excited. So it was another pretty bang average Reynoldstown.
Yeah, as is the case usually these days. On to John Bon, winning the Ascot Chase, grinding it out, stays the trip very well, the 2 mile 5 trip. If I owned the horse, Jake, and I'm sure people are saying, thank goodness Tom doesn't own the horse because I would chuck him in the Gold Cup and see what
Oh, Jesus.
happens.
Yeah,
Poor
okay.
horse.
Thank God he's not owned by you. Um, Yeah, no, this was just brilliant, wasn't it? This was everything we love about National Hunt racing. Whether or not he goes on to Cheltenham, I hope he does. I think he should go in the Ryanair and take his chance. And I'd say he'd have a much better chance in the Ryanair than he would ever have had in a champion chase. But yeah, as you said, he showed he stays the trip. Pete Dory was absolutely drilled for his life for this race, like he is every single year. Obviously Pete Dory just ran to his level, and John Bond was better than him on the day. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Obviously, it's a fairly tough race to have this close to Cheltenham, but he's always thrived on his racing beforehand. And if they take their chance in the Ryanair, it probably means that Fat Defar's gone to the Gold Cup, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd imagine so. And he's a 10-year-old now. He's not going to have too many races left in his career, Dan, but he maintains that 1-2 record. It'd be quite something if he managed to do that all the way until he retires.
Well, the Ryanair might be then a stretch, I guess. That might be where that sequence comes to an end potentially. Oh no, look, we often get these kind of match races, and let's be honest, this weekend was pretty bang average in terms of a spectacle, and this was very much you were hoping it was going to turn into the match it promised to be if it was going to have any sort of hype, and it was a great race. It was a good one to watch. One thing I took away was when did Blow Your Wad move to Gary Moore? Like when
Yeah,
did
I
that
did
happen?
notice that. Yeah.
I was like, one sec. He was only running about a month and a half ago for Tom Lacey. What happened there? So that kind of caught me off guard, really. And obviously, a lot in behind were just very much there to pick up prize money, and rightly so. How much bearing this has on Cheltenham, wouldn't be sure. And obviously, John Bond gets all the plaudits, but credit to Paul Nicholls and Pic Dory, who I thought last season was starting to show signs that he was declining, and arguably this season he's even better than last year, actually, based on what he's achieved. And obviously, he's a year older. So, two proper veterans who've been very consistent over the years, and both a great advertisement for National Hunt racing.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Finally, Red Mills Chase at Gorham Park on Saturday. Probably the highlight for me of the weekend in terms of visual performance came from Ampere Pass, Jake, who at one stage looked as though he was going to be a pretty well adrift second to Safureur, but that turbo kicked in and goodness me, he flew home.
Yeah, it was great, wasn't it? It was such an ice cool ride from Paul Townend, who knew the horse he had underneath him. That let's put it that way. He was last, pretty much, wasn't he? I think it was the second last, and then still had plenty to do at the last. But came there on the absolute snap, just pushed out to win by a cozy length at the line, always knowing he's getting there. Very, very cheeky. Yeah, love Imperial Pass as a horse. Obviously, his form at Aintree looks ridiculously good. Great to see him back. He's another horse where we don't actually know if he's definitely going to go for a Ryanair or not. They could just go to Aintree again. But yeah, time will tell. Maybe that will again depend on the likes of a Gaelic Warrior and a Factor File and what their plans are.
Yeah, I mean, wherever he does go down, he's a proper horse with a big engine.
Yeah, he is, and I think he's 5 Grade 1s now. So he's quietly amassed quite the CV in his relatively young career. So fair play to him. This was a run at a complete crawl. Like it was like 13 seconds slower than the beginner's chase that was run straight afterwards. So like bare form, substance, nothing. But it was just kind of very stylish to see how much of how much of a mimic Townend was taking out of the rest of them by just quickening up in the way he did. I'd say Aintree probably more likely to be the main target. Obviously, the fact we haven't seen him this late as well would suggest it's not been an ideal prep, but yeah, wherever he goes, he adds a new dimension to it.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, that brings us on to the priced up boosted double for this week. If you fancy Old Park Star for the Supreme, and Narciso has for the Triumph Hurdle, you can get that at 7 to 1 in the double with priced up, boosted from 11 to 2. So Old Park Star and Narciso has together at 7 to 1. Okay, on to news updates. And once again, we come to Jake for this week.
Yeah, so since we've last recorded, there was scratchings for the Grade Ones. Active Innocence only left in the Turners. El Fabiola and Nami in line were taken out of the Champion Hurdle. No U proof. My headache from a few weeks ago has been cured. Thank God I didn't go for him. He was taken out of all the novices, same as David Crockett. Love Me Tender. Jimmy DeSoy wasn't put in the Brown Advisory. He also wasn't put in the Jack Richards today either, so he won't be at the Cheltenham Festival. Strong leader out of the Stairs Hurdle as well. Ollie Murphy's finally got his way in terms of not running that horse at Cheltenham again. And Pagan has also since been scratched from the Mares Chase as well, following her latest disappointing run. Mighty Park obviously didn't appear last weekend. He was supposed to run in the Sheila Bork, or allegedly supposed to run in the Sheila Bork, didn't end up turning up. So despite being backed into pretty much Turner's favourite now, he's going to have to go there off the back of one maiden run if he does go there. The Supreme is obviously still an option, was spoken about at the press morning at Willie Mullins as well. Constitution Hill, we'll find out when this episode's up if he actually got in, but I think he's going to be fine getting into the novice stakes at Southwell on Friday. The whole drama about that has just been hilarious. But they managed to find two extra boxes so that they can have 14 runners rather than 12 runners. Well done them. And lastly, just a bit of sad news: Navajo Indy has been retired. Obviously, the likable Tom Simmons horse who was actually coming into a few people's radars for the Coral Cup and the like, but he picked up an injury, so they've retired him.
Okay, good stuff, Jake. Thanks for that. Did make me laugh about Emmett Mullins today, saying that he thinks they've over-schooled Constitution Hill and they shouldn't have had too many as many schooling sessions over hurdles because he thinks that he's got complacent. So yeah, from one genius to another, that's different opinions.
Emmett would have had him off 115 in a handicap hurdle to start his early career. That's where he went wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we're going to have a look at our portfolio so far. It's always an enjoyable thing to do. Well, usually is if we're sitting on some nice prices, which Dan, at the moment, you're looking pretty decent.
Oh, it would have looked so much better if Liv Conti hadn't picked up that injury. Those would have been two blinding bets in terms of the value if he'd gone into like 8 to 1 favourite. So 33s would have looked pretty, but there we are. That's the perils of this game. Madara very much the silver bullet, really, in that arsenal. Continues to shorten. I think shortened again today. Obviously, I think the Dan and Skelton stable tour came out on the Racing Post, and obviously they spoke about him obviously just having a favourites chance there. I imagine he'll go off even shorter. I could see him going off around 7 to 2 because there's very little in that race that I saw that was worrying me. So very happy with that one. The other four really haven't really changed. They've slightly contracted slightly, but nothing's really happened with them in the interim. So still fine with all four. So it's a shame about Liv Conti, but Madara at 25 is very much the standout hope at this stage.
Yeah, Madara's been absolutely pummeled in that plate market. Good stuff, Dan. What about you, Jake? How are you looking?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy overall. First 2 weeks probably got off to a bit of a slower start than I was obviously hoping those two to do at the time. Monge 2, they're not even talking about just the Triumph now. They're talking about the Fred Winter and the Mares
Anything else
as well. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I mean, I'd just chuck her in the Triumph, and you know how close you've got to Narciso has before, so you could easily run into the places if not anything else. But we'll see. The Conky, yeah, I think she'll, as I said before, I think she'll shorten a bit before the race, just when people realise that there's literally nothing outside the top two in the market. Dr. Steinberg, obviously, he's now the absolute captain of the team, 16-1 into 11-4. I just completely love him. And something I've noticed actually over the last couple of days is the Devil You Know is now into around 6-1, and the people that are giving out about the price of poor Dr. Steinberg should be giving out about the Devil You Know's price, because I think that is of much worse value, to be honest, considering he was absolutely kicked out of the way when they met the last day. So as much as I love both horses, Dr. Steinberg, yeah, I'm very happy with him, and nothing has really come out of the woodwork, has it, for the Albert Bartlett? And I think, maybe an I'll sort that might be one that comes in a bit before the off, but other than that, I don't think there's a lot in there. Saratoga, he's the handicap now, 14-1 into 5-1. Love his chance. The only annoying thing is, horses like Manlager and stuff. There are other plots in there, as you expect in this type of race, but there are some other nice types, so that's just something to look out for. Ballyfad, 10-1 into 8s. He's barely moved, but I think that the move will happen for him once it's kind of confirmed where he's going. Obviously, they said in the press morning at Gordon Elliott's that unless it's completely bottomless ground, he'll be going to the Turners pretty much. So happy with that one. The Passing Wife and Carbile, yeah, not much has changed in those two markets. Carbile got a nice form boost at the weekend, but very happy with those positions.
Are we allowed to claim 20s on the Passing Wife, or is that only for other podcasts?
Yeah, it's only for one particular podcast, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we got Lambert with 12s, and all of a sudden everyone's pillaging the 20s. I feel hard done by there. Look at the value that we could have accrued. Not fair.
The non-existent 20-1. Yeah, good stuff, Jake. I will be quick on mine. Yeah, I'm fairly happy, I would say, so far. Bob Ollinger put up at 10s, is now 13-2 for the Stairs Hurdle. I guess part of that's on the back of Henry de Bromhead's comments, basically saying he's a better horse than he was even last year. And he's obviously unbeaten at Cheltenham, so that's good to see. Talk the Talk is actually halved in price, amazingly, 8-1 into 4-1. And that was before he was 8-1 before Old Park Star won the Rossington Main, and he's now 4-1. And I am very, very concerned about Old Park Star because he looks an absolute machine. Not so worried about El Kairos, who I think is going to be a speedball and possibly find that Cheltenham Hill. Others staying on a little bit stronger than him, but I really do fear Old Park Star. Old School Outlaw, 10-1 and 3-1. I'd say a bit like Dan with Madara, maybe not quite as impressive a price shrinkage, but she's my silver bullet, I would say, at the moment. I think she's got a massive chance. Love the way she did it last time. And there's very little now in the market, really, between her and Bambino Fever, who is still favourite, but there's not too much between them. I think Bambino's around about 15-8, 2-1, and now Old School Outlaws 3-1. So really happy with that position. Mentioned Lovely Hurling not running in the Jack Richards. That's hugely disappointing, but I thought he had a lovely profile for it, but these things happen. And then the other two, Yeah Man and 6.5. Yeah Man for the Potemps. So that was so funny, wasn't it, when he got qualified last week? And what really made me laugh, I think more than anything else this season, was that Gary O'Brien and Ruby Walsh were on course, and they were talking between them, wondering why he was running in a 2-mile maiden hurdle. And for the first time in my life, I think I know more than they did, because I was saying at the telly, he needs a fifth run. He needs a fifth run over hurdles. And lo and behold,
for all the viewers at home, who you should have seen the messages Bully was putting into us when he realised he put up a horse that wasn't qualified, and really there didn't seem to be much hope of him having that fifth run either. Like, it was very limited opportunities. This man was distraught. He was abusing himself. He's like, I can't believe I've done it. I'm such an idiot. Don't worry, you were a genius, because the 2-mile graded novice hurdle was always the plan. So whatever the race he ran in, you did it. Well done.
Oh, mate, it was head and hand stuff, wasn't it? And I think you get to a 9-year-old and you think he must have run over hurdles 5 times. He's had a long and illustrious career. And,
illustrious stretch.
Yeah.
Hearing me. He's had a career.
He's had a career. Yeah, he's had a long career. Yeah, but not illustrious, maybe. Okay, yeah, and then no real comment on 6.5. We're still the same price for the county. So, yeah, those are my selection, my portfolio.
It was in the Moor battle as well, though, Bully, which will be interesting if they go for the Moor battle. And she's in the Moor battle as well, so she could go for the bonus, which would be interesting.
Yeah,
she won't.
You sound enthralled.
Yeah.
I don't want her to. I want to just win the county, and that's that. Okay, on to Ante-Post bet number 7. And Dan, over to you this week.
Yeah, these are going to be some fun ones, aren't they? A lot of overlap in the bet was about to occur. We talked about weak handicaps, and one of them I think is very much the Ultima. Me and Jake were both warming to Dwayne Quest, very much one of his sort of suggestions that I was, okay, I could see that. Yeah, he didn't get entered. So that was immediately ruined straight away. And then you look at the list, how it is priced up currently. Like, obviously, Jaguar's now very short. And you can see the argument, the up in trip. He would have a very bad profile for an Ultima. No, I mean, no winner I can remember has ever been going up in trip to this for the first time ever. It's very rare. You generally want solid 3 milers in the race. I'm almost happy just to let him win at the price he is. Town looks like coming back. He's fully in the Enigma category for me at this stage. Obviously, just a bit of a head case, clearly. And then you're into a whole host of potential non-runners. King of Answers, they've talked about National Hunt Chase or the Midlands National. Bat Me or Sack Me's National Hunt Chase. Vendigo will go Brown Advisory. Iroko, no idea, but they've got Jaguar. Handstands, they've been talking about it, but I mean, he'd be off a mark in the high 150s, and he's not exactly done much this season. So a load of others that are also running at Kempton this weekend. So you really do thin out that field really quickly. And it leaves you only 2 or 3 really that are of interest. Jake will be touching on one later that it was very much on my radar as well. But I've sided with Leave of Absence in the end, who was somewhat coming onto my radar a couple of weeks ago, and I was warming to it, then I was cooling off it, and now I'm just at the stage where I think at the price of 25's number on no bet, I'm happy to take that chance. He's a 9-year-old, but he's only had 11 career starts under rules, so he's very lightly raced. He started his career with Chris Gordon, where he was very good in bumpers. He won twice, and he was third in the Aintree bumper. He only had 1 start over hurdles for him, where he beat Blow Your Ward and Rambo T. And thereafter, we didn't see him for the best part of, well, I think over 2 years, 758 days, where he reappeared sort of last November, trained by Anthony Honeyball. Went straight over fences, and it was clearly a case of sort of building him back slowly from what was clearly quite a significant injury to keep him off the track for so long. He started over 2 mile 2, then they threw him in the Reynoldstown last season on the back of that, having not even won his chase debut, where he just kind of ran for the experience, it seemed. He was never really in with a winning chance. And then he went to Newbury at the back end of last season, where he won it in pretty decent style in a novice handicap, and it kept him as a novice until November, the start of this year, which enabled him to run at the October meeting in a race that was a bit of a farce in terms of there were a lot of fences doled off. And to be honest, I think that actually really conspired against him because he was a very efficient jumper. Like, jumping is one of his main attributes, and he was always pretty much leading that day. And as we know, when fences are doled off and it becomes a real test of stamina, you do not want to be in front too soon. You leave yourself a real sitting duck for those in behind. Obviously, he had a couple that came to challenge him. He was pushed along fair enough for a long way. And he just kept finding. Like, it was a really admirable attitude he showed. Now, it was Pied Piper who was the eventual last challenger, who is the strangest horse I think I can ever remember, in that he was a high-class middle-distance flat horse who became a really good juvenile hurdler and now is just a bit of a mule 3-mile chaser. So I'm not sure what kind of career trajectory he's gone on. But what I took from it was he handled the track, he showed a very good attitude, and I think if there were fences in there, all the fences, he would have won far more comfortably. Pulled up next time, but was a miss post-race. As a stable tour that Anthony Honeyball did, said he wasn't right at all after that race, so you can put a line through that. It was on soft ground, which I don't think was ideal, but clearly there was more to that than met the eye at the time. But he bounced straight back in the Silver Cup at Ascot off a mark of 145, where quite a funny race to watch because they got racing, I think, down the back quite early. And he was always sat in like second place with Henry's friend upside, always going the better. He jumped his way to the front 3 out. He traded at 1.03 in running. He looked for all the world he was going to win. But I think he's quite idle in front. I think he likes a horse upside to battle with. And I think what you saw at Cheltenham was a horse who would keep responding for pressure. He almost got a few lengths clear. I think he took his eye off the ball slightly, got into the bottom of 2 out, gave the others a chance. Rex Dingle surrendered the rail as well to Deep Cave. And in the end, I think that proved pivotal as to why he didn't win. I think he went through the race like the best horse in it by some distance. The handicapper, as a result of it being such a muddling race, only gave him £1. I don't think there was a massive amount of depth to that race, but I thought he shaped like the best horse in it, to my mind anyway. And then he went to the Denman on heavy ground when last seen, where, again, heavy ground wouldn't be for him. He's very much a better ground horse, so you are going to be hoping for the torrents of rain to stop eventually. We know what Cheltenham's like. You could have a dry week before the festival week, and it'll still be good to soft somehow. So I wouldn't be too worried at this time. It's just a variable you can't really account for realistically. And he only went a 4-1 for that. I'd go a 4-1 for a Denman, albeit a four-runner one. There was some market support, which I found quite bemusing. If it was good ground, I might want to take it a chance, but I wasn't sure about him on the heavy. He shaped absolutely fine. It was single file stuff. He was always in third. He actually travelled into it, turning in like he might mount a challenge. He got into the bottom of four out and wasn't really given an overly hard time thereafter. It was a good run under the circumstances. So I think what we're dealing with really on profile is a very lightly raced second season chaser who's got a win over course and distance, arrives on the back of two very solid runs where I think you can mark up both. I also think he's slightly better going left-handed as well rather than right-handed, which Anti-Honeyball has also mentioned. And it just looks a pretty poor year. So at 25-1 currently, do I think he's chucked in off his current mark? No. But I don't think it's a race you're going to have to be chucked in. I think you're just looking for a horse with a solid enough profile, and he would tick a lot of boxes.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. So much so to the point where I'm also putting Leave of Absence in my portfolio this week. I won't continue or mention too much more than Dan has because that is the most comprehensive of arguments possible, really. One thing I would just add though is that, as Dan says, I think jumping is his main attribute, his main asset. And you look at all the data, it just backs it up. I mean, I know that he didn't jump all the fences at Cheltenham, but he was by far the best jumper in the race back in October, and given the fact he was 7.5 lengths gain jumping over the field, he's just so sure-footed that's going to have to help him in a race like the Ultima. And given the fact that it was a long time ago, the last Irish trained winner of the race, I mean, it's not happened for a good few years now. You're looking at the early 2000s was the last winner. So hopefully that trend can continue in the race. And yeah, Dan, I'm with you. I'm going to go with Leave of Absence, and I imagine that's not music to your ears, but hard luck, I'm afraid.
An ultimate double up we probably didn't expect, and listeners and viewers didn't really expect either. Unprecedented times we live in here. So we'll see. If you're on my shoulder somehow on the Tuesday, like you were when Chianti was running, saying he's in a great position here, and it's like we've jumped 3 fences, I will throw you down the stairs. So for your safety, don't do that.
Duly noted. Right. Okay, I'm actually going to put up another selection in a minute or two. But Jake, come to you. I know you've got 2 selections yourself this week.
Yeah, shall I get to the actual ultimate winner now, shall I? You've had
Yeah.
yeah, no, as Dan mentioned, obviously it's been a race that we wanted to attack for a while. Dorian Quest I actually was getting really, really sweet on, just couldn't get any confirmation as to whether he would go or not, and then didn't get entered. So that was that. The horse who would win this race if he was actually going to run in it, which he's not, is Wendigo off 147 as a novice. Like, he just has an outstanding profile. Just want to say that here in case he does end up switching. I mean, I've already backed it, but I wouldn't put you off having some money on non-runner, no bet. But obviously they're going to go for the Brown Advisory and fair play. The horse though that I actually do like for the race is Confusion for Joe Parkinson and Sue Smith. Now, I'll be honest, coming into today before entries, I probably wasn't thinking that I'd end up putting up Confusion on this show, but as Dan mentioned, the race is very tricky. There's not many angles. There's not many progressive horses. There's not a lot of novices, obviously, due to the new rules. The likes of a Handstands has been thrown in here. The likes of a Johnny Who is back for more. Obviously, Dan's already touched on Jaguar, Iroko. I don't expect they'll both run, so something's got to give there. Quebecois qualified today over 2 miles at Newbury. I mean, he jumped like an absolute bunny on New Year's, not New Year's Day, on Trials Day when he ran here. But I mean, overall, he just wouldn't do it for me.
Nope.
And that leads me to Confusion, who, okay, he's a second season novice, not a novice, but he's just got that upwardly mobile, progressive profile that we don't actually know where his ceiling lies yet, because what I would say is he's had 5 runs and they all came between the 1st of November and the 17th of January, which is a lot of racing to have been done in such a short space of time. He won absolutely bolt up at Wetherby first time up, 5-2 that day, won it easily. And then he went off 9-4 favourite for the race at Haydock on Betfair Chase Day, the 3 mile, 1.5 furlong race. That's the same course and distance as the Betfair Chase, but ran afterwards. Went off 9-4 favourite, and he just unseated at the 11th fence when looking back on the actual lineup, you would expect him to have gone and won that quite nicely. And that's backed up by next week coming out of Newcastle and absolutely bolting up in the rehearsal. That was off a mark of 126, where he beat Deafening Silence, who's, a bit of a plodder, but he's a fair benchmark, rated 134, and he's beaten him 15 lengths, completely destroyed him. So that was nice. That's so much so was his upwardly mobile progression that people didn't even care that he went up £10 for that, because he went off 8 to 11 favourite for the Roland Merrick Wetherby on Boxing Day, and obviously it was a terrible renewal of the Roland Merrick overall. There was only four runners compared to an ordinary, you know, quite competitive handicap. But Marble Sands was in there, who obviously Tom likes as a horse, and he'd won the last time at Cheltenham, looked very good that day. He's rated 147, and again, he's absolutely destroyed him, beat him 7 lengths. Obviously, was getting the weight, but he was getting £8 at that day, and he's beaten him 7 lengths, completely, hands down destroyed him. So plenty of really nice performances. He then went to the Peter Marsh when we last saw him on the 17th of January, and this day, I wouldn't say everything came to a halt, but I'd say that he started to feel the effects of having so many races and such little time between his races as well. But it was still a really good run. So he was off a mark of 145 that day, got beat 2 lengths by Imperial Saint. Now, Imperial Saint, they've kind of spoken about as more of an Aintree horse than a Cheltenham horse. He's obviously been entered in the Ultima, which is interesting. But I'd say the fact that Confusion is now going to be £3 better off with him for only being beaten 2¼ lengths at a time where he was quite over raced, I'd actually say is a very good performance. He had Meartown behind him, who'd be better off with. He had Johnny Who behind as well, who he'd be off the same terms with somehow. So he's got a good level of form from that race, and he's now been given a nice break. I think it's 52 days between 52 days between the two races, which is something he clearly needs. And because he looked a little bit awkward in those closing stages at Haydock, I just wouldn't mind if they put some kind of headgear on him, which again would be another box ticked off for the Ultima. So loads to like about him. He's only 8. He's rated 145. Still progressive. We don't know if he's hit his ceiling yet or not. I thought that around 20 to 1 non-runner no bet, he was just worth a chance. And Sue Smith has won this race before with good old vintage Clouds as well. I think it was like his 20,000th attempt at the race, wasn't it, when he won it? But
Fourth or fifth
very,
time the
very
charm, I think. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So hopefully Confusion won't take 5 times to win this, but I think he's got solid claims.
Just on him, Jake, because obviously he's one I'm going to back as well. I'm going to back 3 this evening, which is a damning state of affairs. But hey, I think there's value in all 3. All I noticed was that his only bad runs, seemingly over fences so far, have come on undulating tracks, like Hexham and Sedgefield. Like that would be my one sort of niggle in the back of my mind. Now I get a lot of the northern tracks that the Premier handicaps are all flat for whatever reason. They just happen to be. So that might just be pure coincidence, but that would just be the one little thing I was looking at. Like, is that a thing, or is it just a case he's just progressing and it doesn't really matter? I don't know.
Something that Joel Parkinson said, I can't remember if it was after Wetherby or Haydock, was that they were looking at the Ultima, but they wanted to get a run in at Cheltenham for him. I think we spoke about this at the time, Dan. The only race they could have gone for is the novice handicap or the 2.5 mile handicap on Charles Day. So neither of those were going to be ideal, preparations were they for the Ultima. So yeah, I'd say it's one of those things where you're just going to have to learn on the day, really, aren't you? I mean, he's obviously progressed a lot since those runs at Haydock and at Hexham and Sedgefield. So you'd hope that he's improved past that and it won't be a problem. But as you said, something that we'll find out on the day.
Great stuff, Jake. I'm going to come to your other selection in a minute because I'm going to put my second one first to give you a little bit of a break from speaking. And I am going to the National Hunt Chase with one big bang for James Owen. Hopefully he can provide me with another decent prospect in my portfolio. I'm just going to run through what he's done so far very briefly. He didn't do a huge amount in Ireland for Paul Tobin. But since coming to James Owen, he was clearly very well handicapped because the first start that he made for James was off 106 with Alex Chadwick, £7 claim then in a Haydock handicap hurdle back in March 24, and he absolutely destroyed them. Then he went to Uttoxeter, won a novice hurdle, Then finished second behind Hymack in the Newton Abbott novice hurdle. Went to Haydock for that Stayers handicap hurdle that's really valuable in November, the fixed brush hurdle, and finished second behind Shoot First. So it didn't take him long in this country to prove himself a decent handicap hurdler, albeit off fairly low marks. He was second off 124 with Cian Hogan's £7 claim that day. So he was still operating off fairly lowly marks. After that, went and finished behind Doddy the Great. So Doddy the Great got his revenge in the Pertemps final, but he still ran really well for fifth and showed that he's fine at Cheltenham, which he's already done before, but again, he would go on to do later on. Went to Punchestown, finished third. Again, a really good run. This was off a 1-3-1 behind Jericho de Repene, a massive field. That was a really decent effort. And then it was all about his chasing campaign this year. And I say it was all about his chasing campaign because his owner, after he won the Haydock valuable Haydock handicap hurdle in February, after the race, said that it's all about chasing for this fella. Anything that he does, I know it's that all cliche, anything he does over hurdles is a bonus. But at least given the fact that he was a pretty good handicap hurdler, to hear that going into his chasing career was really encouraging. And he made his chase debut in November, I'm sure most of you remember, at Cheltenham, when he looked to me to be the winner for most of the final half mile or so, before Sean Bowen managed to elicit the most wondrous finishing effort out of Wade Out. It was a nudge and nurdle job, wasn't it, and getting him home in the end to win going away. But it was still a really good first effort, a first chasing effort from One Big Bang, eventually finishing second. And he jumped the best in the race that day, according to Race IQ data, which for a first timer I was really pleased with. He also travelled supremely well, which I thought was a really good sign. I went to Southwell thereafter and beat Cam Sinas. But it was a decent effort nonetheless. It was a nice confidence boost. It was a fairly simple assignment in the end, but he did beat him well, and he was getting £3 from Cam Sinas, but beat him 5 lengths and beat him pretty easily, and certainly took him on for the lead from some way out. Which suggests to me everything that I've seen so far of offences is that stamina is his game. He was very strong at the line over 3 miles half furlong that day. Even though he got beaten by Wade Out the time before, I don't think it was want of lack of stamina. He was just done for a bit of a turn of foot, and possibly done for a lack of experience over fences. It was his first time, remember, and I think that can be easily overlooked. Then went to Doncaster. Okay, disappointing last time. Even money favourite, beaten by Western Knight and beaten fairly easily. But there was no elan or zest really in his performance. I think dropping back in trip didn't help. 2 miles 3 furlong it was that day, and previously his both his two fence chase starts have been over 3 miles 1 furlong, 3 miles half furlong. So I don't think that the trip really worked for him. But in a way, it's worked for me because it means that the handicap has dropped him £1 to 139. He'll be in the National Hunt Chase off a nice weight, and I do think that the extra trip is going to bring out the best in him. And I think he's off a nice handicap mark in my view. Okay, he won't be able to get a claimer on probably for the day, but it doesn't matter too much. I think he's off a nice rating, and he's had the 3 starts now. He's qualified. He's had enough experience. He's got Cheltenham form to his name. Any rain that falls might play to his advantage. I don't think he needs it, but he does operate in soft ground. We've seen him win on good to soft and yielding in the past, so I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. And he's got the profile of a highly progressive horse in the making, and I think as an 8-year-old we yet to see the best of him. And James Owen, I think, is going to get his head in front at Cheltenham for the first time at the festival, that is. So, yeah, One Big Bang is my selection this week. Well, my second selection this week.
Pop quiz, Bully. How many horses that have completed in his races, in his 3 chase starts, has One Big Bang beaten?
Well, it's obviously going to be an absolutely tiny number.
2.
There you go. Well done.
He didn't beat anyone home last time. He won a match, and then he beat Isaac de Zobo at Cheltenham.
And you know what? The great thing is that Isaac de Zobo has franked that form. So there you go. Went to extra and won by 5 lengths.
Well, yeah. Well, you've got 2 from the same race because obviously leave of absence was pulled up that day. So you're hoping for to be a strong piece of form.
Thing is, I know that's not ideal if you're looking at it from a singular point of view, but at the same time, he's
quite funny.
It is quite funny, but if you're looking at it from an experience point of view, and beating horses in behind, like he's got so much hustle and bustle of big fields and handicap hurdles.
It's more a point of how farcical these beginners' excellence chases are.
I mean, the trouble is though, what can you do if you're James Owen? You just got to target those races, and it's actually good for you because in a way, okay, you might be losing out experience wise, but you haven't got money to beat, have you? So I suppose from his point of view, it's good.
And last time was just to getting qualified, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and it was over a much shorter trip. So yeah, I mean he'll be going over a mile further than he did at Doncaster, and he's got a nice pan drop in the weight. So yeah, I mean, look, it looks a decent race this year, that's for sure. And Jake, I know that you fancy something else in the race.
Yeah, unbelievably, I'm not going to be following you up with a double selection. Don't know how the viewers didn't guess that. Um, yeah, I mean, the horse that I like for this is a horse who I actually wanted to put up after he last won. But we were recording before the handicap marks came out, and I didn't want to risk his mark being completely destroyed. Then by the time we got to the next show, his price had been completely destroyed as well. So now is the time, though, to actually get involved with him after the entries today, because obviously this is a race that, as we said, that the wall parts come out of. The race has cut up a fair amount, and the horse I really like is Newton Tornado, who, okay, he's only into 7-1 now, non-runner no bet, which I think you can get 8-1 without the non-runner no bet if you want that. But I think it's now is the time to strike because there's plenty more developments that are going to happen in this race. Um, so Back Me or Sack Me's going to go. He's got a solid chance. You'd have obviously stamina concerns like most of these. You just have that nagging doubt, but he's going for Emmett Mullins. He'll have his chance. Wade Out is I just completely can't have him whatsoever. I think he completely threw the toys out the pram again at Windsor the last day. I just think he'll make so many mistakes on the way around. He'll probably stay on strongly towards the finish, but I think that'll be into a place more than anything else if he's lucky. Argento Boy's then next in, and he's a horse who's rated 144 in Ireland, so I'd say he has absolutely zero chance of getting into this, unless the handicap is feeling very, very generous. The Jukebox Kid, as we've kind of discussed, could go to the Irish National off 142. I'd say he's got a fair task anyway. Joystick is also in there. He beat Slade Steele last time out, so if the handicapper takes that literally, which he hasn't really got a reason not to, again, he would have absolutely no chance of getting into this. He might be one that just sneaks in, maybe, but again, you're taking a chance. Grand Jess one at the weekend has been hiked up. Blaze the Way's in the market, and as Dan kind of mentioned by talking about him for the Ultima earlier, he's been given a mark of 146 for the Grand National. So again, he's not qualified for this, so he'll be coming out. You've got loads of horses down towards the foot of the betting that you just wouldn't even fancy in an ordinary handicap, let alone at Cheltenham. So Newton
Assume you're not
Tornado, I think
including one
is
big bang in that list.
well, I'll let you have him, but Newton Tornado getting £6 off of him, I think, is going to be a very tough task for your horse. Um, he's a horse who last season he ran in some really nice novice hurdles, but was always shaping like he'd be a better chaser. He ran some good races. He ended up finishing winning at Foss last the end of the season, but going over fences, he went over fences in October at Cheltenham on the old course, and he was absolutely pinging his fences around there. And then I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. Josh Stacey turns around to us and goes, "Wow, look at Newton Tornado. He's absolutely flying." And then he just falls straight through the third last. And that was the end of that. But he showed that he handles Cheltenham no bother at all. He jumps the fences brilliantly. And he's just unlucky for he's a novice first time out in a competitive handicap. So you can forgive him that. Next time out, he goes to Bangor, heavy ground, 3 miles, proper stamina laden testing stuff, and he absolutely bolted up from the front. Won by 9 lengths that day under a great ride from Jamie Brace. Never saw another rival really, but jumped for fun, and that takes some doing at Bangor, especially on heavy ground. So that was a proper performance. He pulled up at Newbury in December on the 29th, and this is a performance I think that kind of puts most people off of him when they see a little P in his form line. But it was just because he made a bad mistake at the first fence down the back, and Ben Jones just straight away pulled him up just in case anything had gone wrong. Basically, he kind of lost a lot of his chance that day from this mistake, which I guess is something you would say is a worry for him overall. But on the whole, he jumped brilliantly. So I think it's just that novice mistakes that he's learning from, and he showed that at Doncaster on the last day on Trials Day. This is obviously the win I was alluding to, where again he's just absolutely destroyed them from a position where Dylan Johnston rode him this day, and he was trying to take a lead, trying to give him a good education, and they got to the top of the home straight, and he was traveling so strongly that he just took himself into the lead, and it was probably earlier than Dylan wanted. Well, clearly earlier than Dylan wanted him to be there, but got to the front, jumped for fun down the home straight, and went on and scored just as he liked. I think he won by 6.5 lengths that day. The field probably wasn't the best, but he still absolutely destroyed them. And he actually recorded a time that was quicker than the Premier Handicap that day, the Great Yorkshire Chase, which is something else that's quite interesting. So that's the run where he was running off 127 that day. I was kind of worried about what the handicapper would do, but he only gave him £5, which I think is extremely fair for what he did, considering the manner in which he destroyed that field. Straight after the race, Rebecca Curtis said the National Hunt Chase. He's got a remarkably similar profile to Haiti Colours. Not saying he's as good as Haiti Colours, obviously, but it's just a profile that's very similar to the winner last year. 133, I think, is a really good mark. And something else to note as well is I know a lot of people will slag off Racing Post ratings, but he's got a Racing Post rating for that race of 140, and he's only rated 133. That's quite rare for there to be such a significant difference between your RPR and your actual OR. So he's got a lot in his favour. I think he's going to improve it going up to 3 mile 6. I think he's shown as much as he can show to tell you that he'll stay that trip. And as such, I'd rather take the price now. And something else I noticed as well is Haiti Colours was 4-1 this time last year, and he shortened before the race into 7-2. Obviously, not much, but he still shortened before the off. So every chance from 7-1 that he could go off half that if everything goes his way.
Good luck, Jake. A sound argument made as always, and may the best man win, which will probably be you. We shall see. Fingers crossed we both get good
Tuesday's a big day now, isn't it, for this podcast? Deary me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a proper day as well. I mean, that Tuesday looks the first 2 races look absolute crackers, don't they? The Supreme and the Arkle look tremendously good. Good stuff. That brings us to an end of this week, episode 7 of Ante-Post Bet Series, and we'll see you all next week for a handicap weights discussion, which will be very interesting. And please do remember to like if you enjoy the video. We'd love to get 300 for episode 7, and remember, subscribe if you can. On the road to 4,000, it is, after all, completely free. From all of us here on The Jump Show, it is goodbye until next time.